The tree undoubtedly is alive, yet 99 of it is dead. The great tree is an ancient spire of dead wood, made of lignin and cellulose by the ancestors of the thin layer of living cells, which constitute its bark. How like the earth, and more so when we realize that many of the atoms of the rocks far down into the magma were once part of the ancestral life of which we all have come. The root question of Gaia's critics, and a central point in his theory, concerns the difference between a planetary environment, which might only be the aggregate result of myriad independent life forms co-evolving and sharing the same host, and one, which is ultimately created by life forms deployed, so to speak, to accomplish the purpose of the larger being. Is the idea of Gaia only a romantic and dramatized description of the terrestrial biosphere and its effects, or is there a planetary being, whose life cycle must be counted in the billions of years, which spawns these evolving life forms to suit the purpose of its being? Do our kidney cells ask each other these sorts of questions? While your white blood cells thrive and reproduce, going about their business, they are indisputably serving the life of the larger body which you use, though whatever consciousness they experience in the realm is certainly far from that which you, the larger being, the whole, experience. Recent scientific work, such as in the field of complex systems, have begun to give us the impression that this opposition of terms, the larger caused by its constituents, or the constituents created by the larger, may be one of those oppositions which are the constructs of our own minds, and must be dropped if we are to understand the truth, which is neither the one nor the other, but more difficult to comprehend and more fascinating to behold. Perhaps there is awareness appropriate at every level. Perhaps that is a property of life. And what might be the nature of its evolution, this planetary being called Gaia? Anthropocentrists to the last, we might assume that the production of the human species is a great step upward for Gaia, a sort of rapidly evolving brain tissue. Or that she prepares the earth as a cradle and crucible of consciousness evolving. Other analogies come to mind. Are we part of her arsenal of interplanetary spores? And what might constitute a life cycle for such a being? Might it be as strange as that of the slime mold? What stage would Gaia be in now? Is our species part of her maturity or an incubation period? Is Gaia herself somehow part of a larger living being, perhaps on a galactic scale? If so, how do the cells of this larger being remain in communication? Will we eventually be able to experience something of the awareness which Gaia has? Lovelock points out that Gaia, being ancient and resourceful enough to have carried out these successive changes of the planet in spite of asteroid collisions and other setbacks, is herself probably not endangered by the relatively momentary depredations of the human species, as it befouls and cripples the biodynamics of its environment. Rather, the danger is to the human race, not only from our own actions, but also by Gaia's reaction to them. He adds the caveat, however, that the passage of a bullet is also momentary, but the damage nonetheless lethal, and that we are not in a position yet to say whether or not some sudden, human-caused imbalance, at a critical juncture, might be catastrophic to Gaia. Lovelock first exposed his idea in his 1979 book, Gaia, A New Look at Life on Earth. The science behind the hypothesis was still sketchy, and it provoked a storm of criticism. It also provoked a lot of research, and the resulting body of information has encouraged Lovelock to publish this second book, a more confident and complete exposition of the Gaia hypothesis. The Ages of Gaia is easily readable for the educated layperson, but includes plenty of scientific depth. So, you can begin to see the dilemma facing the aliens. If this Earth was indeed an entire living organism, then they were messing with powers beyond their comprehension, that could ultimately result in their own demise. They could also see that the existing human beings they had created had started going nuts, as they didn't have any natural balance to themselves, didn't know whom or what they were a part of. So, the decision was made to destroy them all. And the Great Flood occurred. I want to take a few moments here and talk about that flood, as it's important to fully understand a couple of things. First, on every continent, in every tongue, in every race on Earth, the story of the Great Flood has been told. Far from being a regional event, it was as fact the last great cataclysm to affect this earth, and it still resides in our memories, is part of the mental spiritual framework of who we are as a species. Second, the exact method of how this done, why it occurred, is not the subject of this book, but I've provided a list of books for you to read if you're really interested in tins. With the earth itself being the mother of human beings, who is the father? For the answer we look to our ancient history again and find indeed that he has a name, and it is El. El is the name by which the supreme Canaanite deity is known. This is also a name by which God is called in the Old Testament, El, the God Elohim of Israel, El Uriel, Gen 33:20. In most prose it occurs more often with an adjunct El Elyon, the Most High God, Gen 14:18, El Shaddai traditionally, God Almighty, Gen 17:1, El Hai the Living God, Josh 3:10, and very commonly in the plural of majesty, Elohim. In Hebrew poetry El is much more frequent, where it stands quite often without any adjunct, PS 18:31, 33, 48. 68:21. Job 8:3. The word El is a generic name for God in Northwest Semitic Hebrew and Ugaritic, and as such it is also used in the Old Testament for heathen deities or idols. X 34:14. PS 81:10. Is 44:10. The original generic term was Elam. Dropping the memation and the nominative case ending U becomes El in Hebrew. It was almost certainly an adjectival formation and transitive participle from the root to be strong, powerful WL, meaning the strong or powerful one. In Canaanite paganism the El, par excellence, was the head of the pantheon. As the god, El was, in accordance with the general irrationality and moral grossness of Canaanite religion, a dim and shadowy figure, who, Philo says, had 3 wives, who were also his sisters, and who could readily step down from his eminence and become the hero of sordid escapades and crimes.